German government is planning to implement a new migration policy where asylum seekers will be forcibly sent to other countries in a clear violation of international conventions on the protection of refugees. Already, refugees in Germany are having a hard time and are under pressure to leave.
The worst part is that a lot of people go crazy here in this compound. You hear 8 months, 1 year, they just come and tell you your asylum is over. You have to go back to Italy. And you know you are coming from Italy because of the life was not good for you.
Hello, I'm Mubarak Kenya and a warm welcome to Africa Today, a weekly program that gives you an alternative view of news and events making headlines in Africa. In the first segment of our program today, we are focusing on reports that German government is considering deporting asylum seekers and refugees in the country to Eastern Europe and North Africa to then have their asylum claims processed there. We're asking, why is Germany intent on implementing a proposal that is contrary to fundamental human rights? In the second part of our program today, we are looking into reports that the monarchy in Morocco is using an Israeli-produced Pegasus spy program to clamp down on the country's opposition and the Western Sahara independence movement. Stay with us as our experts give us their insight and send your comments through our social media handle as you watch.
Germany dumping refugees in Africa. The German government is planning to implement a controversial migration policy that will see asylum seekers in the country literally dumped in Africa or Eastern Europe. This decision is expected to be implemented by Joachim Stamp, Germany's first ever special representative of the federal government for migration agreements.
However, activists working in the field of asylum and migration say Germany has the means to welcome migrants and therefore the decision should not be implemented.
Political leaders have to realize that in creating a feeling of panic, they are helping the extreme right when it tries to denigrate refugees. We want people to show more solidarity with those driven into exile, both in society and in politics. That's how we avoid a repeat of 2015.
And now to discuss Germany's controversial plan to eject refugees and asylum seekers in the country and dump them in Africa, we have contacted Jonathan Ofei and Sir, the publisher of Africa Briefing. Thanks a lot for your time. Now, why has Germany decided to join the bandwagon of European countries such as Germany and Denmark that plan to dump refugees in other countries, especially in Africa?
Yes, I don't know why Germany, is trying to. Well, it's adopting, that policy, because in principle, I mean, if the refugee is from Africa and want to send them back to Africa, it's fine. But to send other nationals from other continents to Africa, like Britain is trying to do, to me, okay. Look, Africa, we have a problem. Africa has its problems. So you don't, add the problems by sending refugees from other continents to Africa. Okay, no matter how much, I'm not sure that the money you pay to the respective African governments or countries, will make up for, the destruction or the problems that will cause for the country concerned. So I see no reason why, Germany is trying to do that. And again, what Germany is trying to do is against, international conventions. Okay, if somebody comes to your country as a refugee and he is refused that refugee status, you send them back to their country of origin, not to a second country.
The British government announced a new migration plan on 14 April 2022. According to the program, some people who came to the UK without a visa or other permission to enter the country will now be sent to Rwanda against their will to have their asylum claim processed and decided there. UNHCR has opposed plans to transfer refugees to other countries, saying such arrangements simply shift asylum responsibilities, evade international obligations, and are contrary to the letter and spirit of the Refugee Convention. Filippo Grandi, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees elaborates on why they reject such plans.
This creates a huge precedent if it happens. It hasn't happened, but if it did happen, it would create a huge precedent. It would mean that a country with resources, as the United Kingdom, with systems and institutions that are able to manage the process of granting asylum, that this country renounces some of these responsibilities and exports them to another country. And by the way, a country with less resources and less capacity to do so. So if this were to happen, what would I then be able to say to leaders, to governments in countries that are not receiving, refugees in their thousands, as the UK does, but in their millions? Countries in Africa, countries in Asia, in Latin America. What if one of those governments said, we don't want to take them anymore, it's too complicated, let's export them to another country? That would be the end of the practice of asylum as we know it, a practice that is so important to save millions of lives every year.
Despite objection by international organizations, Germany, which claims to respect human rights, is intent on disregarding its international obligations on refugees.
It is just, Germany is just acting with impunity, right? In flouting the International Convention on Refugees. Okay, it thinks it can do whatever it likes. It thinks it can do whatever it likes to do because it needs, to take care of its own nuances, of its own dynamics within the country. So it believes it can go against the UN Convention on Refugees.
UK's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda by force has yet to take off due to ongoing legal challenges. Now, will Germany's plan suffer a similar fate?
Well, it depends on the dynamics in Germany, because what is happening in Britain is that British groups, right groups, refugee groups, and also other human rights bodies in the UK have, taken legal action against the UK government's move. So whatever happens in Germany will be, as a result of the dynamics in Germany. So you cannot say that because the legal system or the British courts, have temporarily halted, the attempt by the UK government to send refugees to Germany. The same thing might happen to send refugees to Rwanda. It doesn't mean that the same thing might happen, in Germany.
Well, neo-Nazis have rioted in parts of Germany against refugee shelters. There are fears that the number of attacks on refugee homes could go up significantly as more Ukrainian war refugees and asylum seekers from other countries are entering Germany. Now, is the government of Germany reducing the number of refugees in the country under pressure from neo-Nazis and other far-right xenophobes?
Well, like I said earlier, I believe it is partly so. It's about, it's an irony because earlier this year, the German government said that, look, they needed to fill about 2 million jobs, right? So they were looking outside, to get immigrants to fill those 2 million jobs. So why, they are trying to send back, refugees, potential refugees to other countries, it beats my comprehension. It beats my understanding. Okay, and again, like I said earlier on, maybe what the German government is doing is pandering to, the agitation by the neo-Nazi demonstrations or the neo-Nazi stand against migration to their country. So I believe that maybe the neo-Nazis are having some effect on German immigration or migration policy.
Iran is hosting millions of refugees amid cruel sanctions imposed by Western countries that are now evading their international obligations regarding protection of refugees. UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, has on several occasions praised Iran for hosting millions of Afghan refugees despite receiving minimal support from the international community. During a visit to Iran in 2016, Grandi hailed a decree by the leader of the Islamic Revolution, which ordered schooling be made available for all Afghan children, regardless of their residency status.
Last year's decree of the Supreme Leader allowing all children or Afghan children to have access to schools is one of the most important gestures of solidarity that any country has expressed for refugees anywhere in the world in the past few years. I'm also telling the international community that we should not take for granted the fact that Iran bears the largest cost for hosting hundreds of thousands, in fact millions of Afghans.
Now, what can countries such as Germany and Britain learn from Iran in terms of taking care of refugees?
Germany, Britain, they know it. Okay, look, I believe despite all the sanctions imposed on Iran, Iran has done very well, should be commended for hosting millions of refugees in the country. But look, most Western countries that believe that there's one law for other countries and another law for them. Okay, so they think sometimes they act with impunity. If it does not suit them, they will not do it. It's as simple as that.
Very well put there. The policies of Western countries on refugees are based on double standards, and that's why they are acting with impunity. I would like to thank our guest, Jonathan Ofei-Ansah, the publisher of Africa Briefing. Let's now take a short break before our next topic on how Israeli spyware is targeting Morocco's opposition. Stay with us.
Israeli spyware targets Morocco's opposition.
The monarchy in Morocco is using a notorious Israeli Pegasus spyware to clamp down on the country's opposition activists, especially those opposed to the normalization of ties with the Israeli regime.
This Israeli spyware can be used to access a phone's messages and emails, look through photos, eavesdrop on calls, track the owner's location, and even film them with the camera. The regime in Rabat heightened its crackdown of the opposition using Israeli spyware during the 12th anniversary of the February 20 movement, which in 2011 was the first Moroccan version of the Arab Spring.
Even with the monarchy using this Israeli spyware to monitor the opposition, Moroccans continue to hold rallies around the North African country, calling for greater freedom and to protest against rapid rise in the cost of basic food products.
أن الدولة تقولت وتجبرت ضد المغاربة والمغربيات ومست أرزاقهم، وبالتالي نقول للدولة المغربية كفى من السياسات اللاشعبية التي تستهدف جيوب المغاربة وتستهدف إدلالهم.
And now to discuss how the Israeli regime is assisting the monarchy in Morocco to clamp down on the country's opposition movement, we have contacted Abayomi Azikiwe. He's the editor of the Pan-African Newswire. Now, thanks for your time today. Why would the monarchy in Morocco use this Israeli software against its political opponents and journalists?
Well, in Morocco, there is an absolute monarchy. They do not want democratization. They are also occupying the Western Sahara, which was a former Spanish colony. And they have been in defiance of the United Nations since the early 1980s, where they declared that an internationally supervised referendum should take place in the Western Sahara over its future, whether it should be an independent country or whether it should remain connected with Morocco. So Morocco is utilizing the advanced spyware of the Israeli regime to curtail opposition in Morocco and also to help combat the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic in its efforts to form an independent state.
Moroccans have come out to vehemently oppose the decision by the monarchy to normalize ties with the Israeli regime. Regular protests take place across Morocco to reject normalization of ties with the Israeli apartheid regime and to express solidarity with Palestinians.
Today we are here, as much as with all Moroccans, human rights organizations, political unions that support the Palestinian people, that denounce the war crimes of the Zionist occupation against the Palestinian people. We are also against the normalization of relations of the Moroccan state with Zionism. This march today and all these demonstrations of the Palestinians is supported by several free movements around the world, in Europe, Latin America, the United States and Africa. This normalization must be stopped in our country.
The monarchy continues to suppress citizens opposed to the normalization deal. The Israeli regime was certainly involved in this suppression through this spyware and even weapons.
They want to utilize the Kingdom of Morocco to undermine African support and Middle Eastern support for the Palestinian struggle. It would make sense that they would try to form ties with reactionary and conservative African as well as Arab regimes. We've seen that in regard to Chad, which is a military regime. Also, the Republic of Sudan, they've also attempted this effort as well, even though in Sudan they passed in 1958 when it was a newly independent country. So yes, they are collaborating with these regimes, which have close ties with the United States as well as France. They feel it would be in their interest to suppress, any type of revolutionary or revolutionary democratic governments in the entire region.
One aspect of the normalization of ties between the monarchy in Morocco and the Israeli regime that has drawn criticism is the purchase and use of the Israeli Pegasus spyware. Now, this spyware seems to be one of the baits used by the regime to entice Arab and African countries to normalize ties with Tel Aviv. Now, can we say that the Israeli regime is now a real threat to democracy and civil rights in countries that normalize ties with it?
It is. It's a clear threat. We see in Sudan that the military regime has resisted any effort to have multi-party elections and to have the military go back to the barracks. We've noticed also within the African Union that Israel is making a new push to gain observer status within that 55-member continental organization. Just over the weekend, the African Union held its 36th Ordinary Summit in Ethiopia, and a leading Israeli diplomat came to the conference in defiance of the protocols of the African Union. She was uniformly escorted out of the AU summit just this past weekend, which drew protest from the Israeli government in Tel Aviv. So this is a multi-pronged strategy on the part of the Israeli government that's backed up by the United States to undermine support for the Palestinian struggle and also to prevent the independence of the Western Sahara.
The leader of the Western Sahara region, fighting for independence from Morocco, Brahim Ghali, says the Rabat regime uses the most advanced weapons in the world to attack Sahrawi civilians and neighboring countries. He made the statement mid-January, referring to the military and espionage cooperation between Morocco and the Israeli regime using the Pegasus software.
The Sahara Arab Democratic Republic leadership understands very clearly that the United States and Israel are part and parcel of the national oppressive apparatus in the Western Sahara. They are working in collaboration with each other to prevent the independence of the Western Sahara, as well as to limit and even destroy, support international solidarity for the cause of Palestine. We saw in recent months a visit by the president of the SADR to the Republic of South Africa, where he was greeted warmly We've also noticed that South Africa and Algeria, as well as other countries, have been vehemently opposed to granting observer status to the State of Israel at the African Union. So all of these issues are interrelated, and it's a struggle for democracy, self-determination, and independence, as opposed to colonialism, apartheid, and Zionism.
The Western Sahara leader also says Morocco is dehumanizing the people fighting for freedom and self-determination in this region.
We are facing a phenomenon that mixes between the military occupation and the exercise of racial discrimination. And in addition to systematic human rights violations and plunder and theft of the natural resources, so it's dehumanizing treatment that the Moroccan is doing, exactly like we have been seeing apartheid doing in many African countries.
And now my last question. Can the monarchy in Morocco silence the opposition and the Western Sahara Polisario Front through spying using the Israeli software? Or are we going to see an escalation of demands for democracy in the country?
They may make inroads in regard to suppressing certain aspects of their struggle, but I believe in the long term that the people of Western Sahara will prevail, that the democratic forces in Morocco will also prevail. I think that if you look at what's going on right now in Palestine, despite all the repression and despite the fact that the Israeli regime has moved even further to the right, people are still resisting in the West Bank as well as Gaza and throughout other areas of Palestine. So I think it will be the same situation in regard to the Western Sahara. It was encouraging this weekend to see the actions, the prompt and very decisive actions on the part of the African Union against the Israeli diplomatic attempted intervention in that summit. And this is going to be manifested on a governmental level as well as on a grassroots level throughout Africa as well as West Asia.
Well, there you have it. The Israeli regime's spyware cannot stop the freedom and democratic aspirations of the people of Morocco and other parts of the world. I'd like to thank our guest, Abayomi Azikiwe, the editor of Pan-African News Wire, for his insight today. And that wraps it up for this week's edition of Africa Today. Drop us a line through our social media handle and let us know your opinion. You can also watch this episode and all our previous shows on our website, presstv.ir. It was great having you, and thanks a lot for watching. Goodbye for now.